Hey everybody, I'm Edwin from Homeseeker Vacation Homes, a short-term rental management company in Toronto. And I'm here today to share a short-term rental report for the Toronto market, and in specific, 5 major neighborhoods we believe are the best places to operate in. A little background about me is I've been hosting for the past 10 years with experiences in cities like Shanghai, Los Angeles, GTA in Toronto, Durham, Hamilton, Muskoka, Karatha Lakes, you name it, all the way up north to Parry Sound. We currently have multiple properties under management. And whenever we work with a new client, the first thing we really want to do with them is to really understand if running an Airbnb business in that property makes any sense in comparison to long-term rental. So in this presentation, it's going to be an XPR market report using the last 5 years of data that we can find from AirDNA and draw the conclusion of what we believe is the top 5 neighborhood to operate an Airbnb in. So let's begin. So first, we're going to go through the main key topics so we kind of understand the flow of the presentation. I'm going to talk about the first thing is the top 5 neighborhoods that we have identified and the data behind it. We're going to compare them all data together and create a market comparison so you can understand what each market provides and why it is based on the statistics. We're going to look at some of the revenue by percentile, meaning the property's quality and how much money they're able to make in the marketplace and how they compare to other properties in the market. And then also the profit margin by bedroom based on long-term rental versus short-term rental. And want to see the difference between the two, if it makes any sense to take the long-term rental route versus the short-term rental route, as we got many people calling in asking if it makes any sense for them to do short-term rental. Some of them don't understand that there is operation cost and that long-term rental sometimes make more sense than short-term rental. And last and most importantly is the key takeaways we want to share with you at the end of this presentation. So how do we consider the top neighborhoods? We're just measuring it with a couple of metrics. So one is based on the revenue, the potential of that neighborhood generating a good, healthy revenue. We want to see a good amount based on listings with 30 plus reviews. They are also in the market for more than 200 days, which means they are full-time short-term rental properties, and also properties with over neighborhoods with over 100 listings at least. So based on revenue, based on profit margin and the market data to back it up to help us determine what are the top 5 neighborhoods we believe are great places to operate in Toronto. So number 1 is the waterfront community. And what we have here is, get in the way here. So we were looking at the sold price on the average right here in terms of 2024 right now. And today we would checked on what's the average sale price. So the 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms are the 3 main categories and typologies we're looking at in this report. The 1 bedrooms start around 600,000 and go all the way up to 1.14 million for a 3 bedroom. And the reason we want to look at the price and want to share with you is because we want to understand if, depending on what kind of loan you have or mortgage you have on the property, if it is able to cash flow based on the rental income or the short-term rental revenue. So here we have in the waterfront community that a 1 bedroom will rent out for approximately $2,500 a month, which equates to $30,000 a year in rental income. And as you can see how there's a kind of a $16,000 jump when you go to the 3 bedroom, which kind of equates to around $3,900 a month for a long-term rental tenant. However, if you were to jump over to the short-term rental market, a 1 bedroom can yield an additional $10,000, which equates to around $3,400 a month. And the 2 bedroom, not too much of a difference here in terms of profit, just $17,000 more, which will equate to around $4,800 a month, annualized over the year. And last, you can see here, there's a huge jump to $82,000 a year in the 3 bedroom space, which equates to around $6,800 a month. So there's a huge difference between long-term rental and short-term rental in the waterfront communities, definitely in the 3 bedroom space. So we'll cut that comparison is there's in a long-term rental, we'll be renting out that unit for $3,900 a month. Obviously, you don't pay for any utilities and all the furnishing and all that stuff behind the operation of a short-term rental. On the upside, though, short-term rental does bring in $6,800 of income every single month for a 3-bedroom. And also, we want to take a look at the listing volume in terms of how much inventory is in the market. You can see that in total, there is probably close to 2,000 listings. And within the 2,000 listings, more than half of it is going to the 1-bedroom space. So it's very competitive. And I suppose you can see the margins are not really significant. You're looking at a $10,000 difference. So is it worth it? That's up to you. But for us, probably not. In the 2-bedroom space, definitely the inventory is a lot lower. Competition will be less. And revenue-wise, not significant, I would say, in comparison to a 1-bedroom. However, the 3-bedroom space, or I would like to look at it as a 2+1, can also be considered a 3-bedroom, yields the most income in this scenario. So in this slide here are the top producing properties in the waterfront community. It's a combination of some townhouses and some condos. But as we can see here in 4th place here, move myself away again, this property successfully generated $188,000 of revenue at 88% occupancy with a daily rate of $705 per night, annualized over the year. So that's fantastic. And look how beautiful this listing is. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath. I clicked in earlier. It's actually a 3-bed, 3+ den. And there's just sleeping more people in there. On the 49th floor with a beautiful view, lots of reviews, all 5 stars. It really shows and proves that in this area with the right property, with the right amount of bedrooms and sleeping amount of guests, you will be able to produce at least $150,000 in this area. In 2nd place, we have Bay Street Corridor. And as you can see here, the purchase price, a little more, $658,000 for a 1-bed, all the way to $1.2 million for a 3. And revenue-wise, we have here a 1-bed at $30,000, which is around $2,550 a month. And all the way up to 3 bedrooms, there is a good uptick, $54,000, which equates to around $4,500 a month. And then in the short-term rental space, just taking a look at the margins here, in comparison long-term versus short-term, there's only a $5,000 difference. I wouldn't recommend doing 1-bedroom in that case. After operation costs, this will be probably less than that, less than long-term rental. Same with 2-bed at a 45, that's a $4,000 difference. $3,800 a month versus $4,200 a month. Not too substantial to run a short-term rental to be more profitable than a long-term rental. But also, again, here in the 3-bedroom space, we have a good, healthy margin of, this is $4,500 a month annualized, and this will be $6,300 a month annualized at $75,000 a year. So we can see here in terms of inventory, a lot less properties here because there's only so many buildings that allow for it. And you can see here that the 3-bedroom has the least amount and makes the most amount of money. Here are the top properties in the Bay Street corridor. I can see here that the best property here made $139,000, 736 daily rate, average daily rate. It's pretty good. Occupancy at 68%. You can see here there's more. They're all averaging around 90, 84, 81. And if they were to operate all throughout the year, then these are the revenue potentials if they were open all year round. And as you can see here that they're over 200 days, except for this one, but most of them are very close to being open all year round. So they're full-time listings. And you can see here all these condos, they all generate a good amount of money, over at least 80 grand. And that's all good news for the people that operate in this area. And there is quite a bit of potential here also. In 3rd place, we have Liberty Village in King West. Here you can see the property price is not so high. I like Bay Street, $625 for a single 1-bed, all the way up to $1.1 million for the 3-bedroom. And rental income here is also not as good. The 1-beds are going for around $2,700 a month, which equates to around 30 grand a year. all the way up to $42,000 a year for the 3-bedroom, which is around $3,000 a month. And if we were to, 3-bedroom would be $3,500 a month. So when we go to the short-term rental space, you can see how there is, in the 1-bedroom space, also not a significant margin. At 29 and 35, you're looking at just a $5,000 difference. Good for some, but after operation costs, there might be quite similar. But we do see how, again, the 3-bedroom or the 2+ then could really reap the benefits, as there is a big spread here at $42,000 a year, which is around $3,500 a month, and short-term rental at $74,000 or $75,000 a year, which more or less is $6,200 a month in terms of income. Here, a little more inventory at $309 for the 1-bedroom, so more competitive, less money to be made. And as the inventory shrinks, obviously supply and demand, there is a small amount of inventory, more beds, more heads, more money, then this leads to a higher revenue. So this is all relevant in terms of supply and demand, in terms of more beds, more heads, more revenue, and obviously the location is an impact to the revenues also. Some top properties in Liberty Village and King West, we see some really good numbers here actually. As you can see here, this going this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the top 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the 12th property here, the 12th in 12th place, this property has a revenue of $91,500 at 78% occupancy. So we can see that this area is performing very well, most likely because it's close to the venues, it's close to transit, it's a good tourist location. Prices are a little cheaper and the area is a little more relaxed. Space is a little bigger. You can see here they're all 3 beds, 4 beds. Those are the ones that are really killing it. Even this 2-bed with a nice view, look at that CN Tower right there, the little gazebo, brings them $143,000 per year. So these are the potentials that we can see in the Liberty Village and King West area. In 4th place, we have the Church and Yonge corridor. You can see here, obviously the purchase price has gone up a little bit because you're in a core of the city, starting at $612,000 for the 1-bed, all the way up to $1.1 million and a little less, depends what you get for the 3-bedroom. Rental income wise for 1-bedroom, $32,000 is around $2,700 a month, and then going up to $51,000 a year for the 3-bed, which is around $4,300 a month. And again, we're looking in comparison to short-term rental versus long-term rental, there is just a small margin here of $2,000 for the 1-bedroom. So most likely, again, 1-bedroom, don't do it. Probably better as a long-term rental. And if you're just looking straight up revenue-wise and profit margins. And in terms of the 2-bedroom, we have not that good also, $3,000 of difference in terms of spread out over the year. So $3,700 a month in long term versus $4,000 in short term. After OPEX, probably less than that. A good spread here at 51 for the 3-bedroom and 74,000 for the 3-bedroom. So $4,300 a month for a 3-bedroom per month, annualized over the year, and then if you switch to short-term rental, it's $6,200 a month. So there will be a good, healthy profit margin here in this area to switch to short-term rental instead of long-term rental. Also, inventory-wise, not a lot, because not a lot of buildings allow for it in this core of the city. There's 195 units available for 1-bed, 60 for 2-bed, and only 6 for 3 beds. So do keep in mind that these numbers for all the data I've shown so far is any listing that has listed within the past year in 2023. And again, these are some of the top properties in the Yonge and Church corridor. You can see the top performing one is a 2-bed, 2-bath that sleeps 8, brought home $167,000 last year at 91% occupancy. Wow, good for this owner. And you can see here trending downwards as the listings head downwards. We're still at 100, 93, 68, 76, So in terms of the top producing properties, there's not really that many. So in terms of competition, not that fierce if you really think about it. And also these are not really running full time, except for starting here, 288, 326 days available. So these guys are just killing it. All right, in last place, we have Mimico and Etobicoke. This area purchase price is surprising for me, actually. 600,000 for the one bed and going to 1.47 million for a 3-bedroom is insane for this area. But what do I know? So, however, if just looking at the math wise, the rental income for a 1-bedroom is only $2,300 a month, and annualized at $28,000. And a 3-bedroom only brings home $3,300 a month, which just equates to around close to $40,000 a year. And if we go switch to the short-term rental, if we were to run it as a short-term, there is no margin to be made here. $241 difference. After all expenses, 1-bedrooms are just losing money in comparison to a long-term rental. And for 3 beds, there is a small margin gain from 3,300 for long-term rental, which equates to 39,600. And as a short-term rental, it'll annualize to be a monthly income to a $4,800 a month at 58,900. So this is a good $20,000 profit margin that can be considered when comparing long-term to short-term rental. And again, inventory is not substantial, 110, also in the single 1-bedroom space. More competition, less money. Here again, 2nd bed, 2 beds, smaller amount of people, and even less in the 3-bed. There's only 6. So if you own a 3-bedroom or a 2+1, anywhere in these 3 communities, you are in a good position to consider short-term rental. Here we're going to look at some of the top properties here. You can see here only one person in this area made $120,000 or north of $100,000. Everybody else is floating around the 65, 70K range. Here's 86, 75, 69, 68, 65, 64. So consistent. You can see this area is bringing home around $60,000 within the top 15% of the listings, and everyone else is less than that. And if you're the top percentile, then you're reaching close to 100,000 or within the $75,000 range. All right, the next thing you want to talk about is the market comparison for all of the top 5 communities using AirDNA as a reference point. They provide a couple items like the rental demand, which means how much demand and people are actually booking in that area. You can see how the Church and Yonge corridor is very popular. There's a lot more demand in comparison to the Bay Street corridor. And this might be because of location-wise and amount of listings available. And then you can see here in revenue growth, year over year, which area has grown. And you'll see how the Church and Yonge corridor actually has grown more over the year because there is more demand. So every single year, there's more people traveling to the core of the city. There's more bookings there. However, the supply, as we saw earlier, is very limited. So therefore, it's boosting that daily rate up, and also the revenue is going up year by year. And you will see that also in the Mimico area and also Liberty Village. Seasonality-wise, here is we see less seasonality in places where there are major draws. So the waterfront community is obviously beside all the sporting events. It's by Union Station. It's just the core of the hub. If you're a tourist, that's kind of where you want to be looking at. And then you have Liberty Village. You might ask why. That's where all the events are, all the business conferences are. There's some sporting event. There's the arena there. There's the sporting field there. There's concerts there. Hipsters are there. So these are kind of keeping the seasonality consistent. And that is also a good thing because there will be less seasonality up and down with your revenue in these two areas versus the other three. Regulation wise, it's the same because the city of Toronto is the same regulation, which is also a good thing and a bad thing, double-edged sword, I would say. In Toronto, every single property minimum needs to be a primary residence, meaning that it's your main home. Also meaning that your driver's license and your health card, that address is the same as the property ownership. I said it doesn't have to be ownership, it can be a lease too. But at least the registration of the license has to match up with the property address to your driver's license to be validated as a primary residence. And on top of that is you're only allowed to short-term rental, which means anything less than 28 days for 180 days. So half the year you can short-term rental, the other half the year we call it midterm rental or month-to-month rental. The next thing I want to share with you is we want to compare some of the major data sets that we look at to determine the market in terms of if it's a good community or a decent community. Here you can see the inventory. So these are all the listings that were live at least a couple of days in 2023. So in Waterfront Community has the most at 2,672 listings. And the occupancy rate in that area is around 60% or 59%. For a one bedroom, the average daily rate is $270. And then a 3-bedroom, the average daily rate is around $535. Annualized in terms of all property types in this area, the short-term rental income here in terms of revenue is around $60,000. And in long-term rental, it's only $36,000. So you can see how in this area, in the macro standpoint, from long-term rental versus short-term rental, there is a good profit margin here if you were to just compare the two. And on average, people are staying around 4 nights on the short-term rental basis, and then afterwards it will be 30 days at a time. And most importantly, we want to share with you is the competition of inventory. Only 18% of all listings are full-time listings. So that means if you were to take this full-time, you will be in the top 20% immediately, which means higher revenue, and basically there is no competition, very little competition. And in the Bay Street corridor, it's the same thing. Inventory is around 332, occupancy is around the same. You see the rates here quite similar. However, the STR income overall in that community, all property types again, 53,000, long-term rental 43,000. So there is a $10,000 difference between the two. And also 4 nights kind of is the average stay, and only 13% of the inventory is full-time. In the Liberty and King West area, also not too many listings at 537. And these are not full-time listings. Similar occupancy, and the daily rates are quite similar. I would say a little less in the 3-bedroom side. And the revenue is around the same for short-term rental. However, the long-term rental income is significantly less compared to the Bay Street corridor. Therefore, the margin here is a lot better compared to Bay Street corridor as a macro community standpoint. Also, the average stay is 4 nights, and then the remaining half year is 30 days. And only 17% of all listings are full-time. So only 94 listings are full-time listings there. The next area in 4th place is Church and Yonge corridor. 342 active rentals in that area. Similar to Bay Street corridor, they're side by side. Surprisingly, this has better occupancy at 66%. And the rates here, because I feel like there's not a lot of 3 bedrooms here, they're mostly 2 bedrooms. So on the high end, the average daily rate's at 388, and then the 1 bedroom is at 229. And average yearly rental income for short-term rental is 52,000, and long-term rental is 42. So there's a $10,000 difference here between short-term rental and long-term rental. And again, similar to all these other areas, it's people are staying around 4 nights, and then the remaining half a year is 30 days. and only 11% of the inventory here is full-time. Lastly, we have Mimico, a typical area, also even smaller amount of live listings here, 180 listings were live last year. Occupancy is a little lower, 57%. One bedrooms at $157 per night annualized as their average daily rate. And then the three bedrooms also not doing too well in comparison to the other markets, with 272 annualized over the year. It's the average daily rate for three bedrooms. That equates to a yearly income for all property types, all bed types, all sizes at $42,000. And in comparison to long-term rental at $33,000, there is another around $9,000 difference between the two. Again, 4 nights on average stay, and only 12% of these properties are full-time. All right. Now we're going to talk about the average revenue by percentile. So what does that mean? So in AirDNA, they break down the data as in terms of the quality of the property and where they stand in the totality of all the listings. So the bottom half of the 25% of one, say there's 100 properties, the bottom 25 properties is the 25 percentile, and the 90 percentile means the top 10%, the top 10 producers, top 10% of the producers of that marketplace. So you can see here that if you're the bottom 25 and you have a pretty bad listing in a waterfront community, you are looking at only $3,000 a month of rental income. That will be the average income in that area in terms of revenue. And you can see how if your property was nice, has a good amount of bedrooms, you can go up to $8,700 a month by being the top 10% listings in the area. This is the potential that we see, and that is what we want to try to achieve with all our clients, is by helping them, guide them to set up the property with the right amenities, the right decoration, and the right photography, and the right buildings to get to an $8,700 per month rental income. And as you can see here, Liberty Village, top 10%, looking at $7,500. Similar in the Bay Church and Yonge Street corridor, $76. The Bay Street corridor actually doesn't make as much at $72, and then Mimico, $5,300. So these are trending downwards, as you can see. But most importantly, we want to see, like, what is the difference between a bad listing and a guest favorite or a super host listing? Is a $4,000 difference here, and another $3,000, like almost like double, just by having a very sick property. It doesn't even matter if you're in the same place. It's just because you have a better product, and will lead to almost double the revenue potential. So you can see Church and Corner, you see that big jump, huge jump. Same here, huge jump, again and again and again. So these trends are the same throughout in all areas. Obviously, the margin can be bigger or smaller, but as we can see here, the potential is there for the top 10%. And even if you don't play by the top 10, the top 25% is still good. And we want to get you up here, obviously. And here is a breakdown of profit margin in terms of bedrooms. So we want to look at in terms of, does a one bedroom, how much is it, like what we talked about earlier in each of the top 5. The one bedrooms don't really make a lot of money in comparison to long-term rental. So we can see here, like in Mimico is almost zero compared to long-term rental. So your threshold is kind of personal, but we believe that anything under 30% or even 40% is considered for us not qualified properties for short-term rental, because after all expenses, you might be actually making less than long-term rental. And our goal is to make sure that there's a balance between the two in terms of revenue, but everyone's reason to do short-term rental is different. But for this presentation in specific, we're just looking at the comparison of long-term rental versus short-term rental to help our clients make a decision in terms of what makes sense for them. So in here, you can see that revenue-wise, it makes more sense having a 3-bedroom. And even 2 bedrooms in the waterfront communities is able to generate similar outcomes. So we see a lot of 2+ dens that do really well. And these are, I would say, is the key indicator that we're looking for, is properties in waterfront community. That's 2+1. The purchase price is a little better and the revenues are high in comparison to a long-term rental. And that probably yields the best. That's why we have placed waterfront communities as the #1 community and neighborhood for short-term rental. Here is just profit margin dollar, what I like to call it. And you can see how that, again, the waterfront community area, being a 3-bedroom, the profit margin dollar in comparison to long-term rental is over $35,000 a year. And for a 2-bedroom, you're looking at $22,000, $23,000 more per year compared to a long-term rental. And you just want to see this trend and see how it's different. And at the end, we can see that our conclusions are quite similar in terms of more beds, more heads, more money, which is very true. And also the location and the seasonality and how it affects the profit margins for short-term rentals. We want to make sure that we can identify why and where and what type. And what we can see is that our key takeaway is that the waterfront community with anything over 2 bedrooms in a luxury space does really well. Only 15% of all the inventory in downtown Toronto are full-time short-term rentals. So the competition-wise isn't too substantial. Again, more bedrooms and beds does equal more revenue. So if you can squeeze in more beds, make the place look good, you can definitely generate more revenue. And again, we see that the newer buildings do really well and better than the older buildings, or newly renovated condos also do well. Properties with a view, either of CN Tower, of the lake, or something nice of the park, those do very well too because of the photography that you're able to convey. And then amenities is kind of, I would say, the main driver for high performing listings is amenities that the property can provide. So you can see here on the right hand side, these properties here have a dining table for 6, 7, 8 people, a beautiful view, nicely decorated. And they have a patio with outdoor seating, barbecue. They offer parking. There's a desk space here in this property, also in this one, that has a nice view that they documented in the photo. Outdoor seating that not everybody gets to enjoy. Barbecue, not all properties have the pool and the hot tub and the gym that the condo provides. Sometimes they don't let you use it, but at least these are things you can check off on your listing that brings it up to page 1, therefore leading to more revenue and then more occupancy, and again, more money. And lastly is the unique architecture and the design of the property are key major drivers to really bring up and be the top 10% in downtown Toronto. All right, and this is I am Edwin Chan from Homeseeker Vacation Homes. We have been in the business for 10 years, and I'm happy to share this report with everybody in terms of what we see and how we're approaching short-term rentals as regulations are coming through. There's different tax laws coming through, and we want to help people navigate through this in the best way through data and through our experience to kind of provide the best guest experience and also the best experience for owners to actually go into this space with confidence that there is a better out than long-term rental in certain scenarios. And again, we're here to help and share value provided here to the community. And so feel free to reach out or drop me a phone number, text message, or email here at Edwin@Homeseeker Vacation Home. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And feel free to visit us on our website. And thanks again.